She was the cleaning lady they invited as a joke, but when she stepped into that ballroom, heads turned, jaws dropped, and the joke was on everyone else. The mop glided silently across marble floors, whispering a rhythm only Naomi could hear. She worked without gloves tonight. Not out of oversight, but intention. She liked to feel the stone. Cold, expensive, impenetrable. Like the people who walked over it every day. She adjusted her head wrap, tucking in the rebellious coil of hair that refused to obey. The Grandridge estate stretched out before her in polished wood, chandeliers, and silver-trimmed portraits of men who never smiled. She was nearly done for the night. One more wing, one more check. Somewhere in the background, Aretha hummed from her earbuds. Naomi swayed faintly to the beat, her body memorizing every note. Her voice wanted to sing, but habit stifled it. Voices like hers weren't meant to fill these halls. Not unless they were taking orders. In the study, a stack of papers lay on the floor. She picked them up, pausing over the corner of one, an invitation mock-up for the annual gala. Gold leaf lettering, white embossed envelope. She smirked. $10,000, a plate for plastic salmon and forced conversation, she whispered. She'd once dreamed of wearing a dress like the ones pictured on the designer's site. Now she cleaned around them. Across the city, Julian Grandridge III clinked a glass of bourbon with two equally tailored friends on his penthouse balcony. "We should spice up the gala this year," said Bryce, loosening his bow tie. "Last year was a snooze fest." Julian smirked. "How do you spice up a parade of narcissists?" "Invite someone who doesn't belong," laughed Graham. "How about that cleaning lady, Naomi, was it?" Bryce choked on his drink. Black Cinderella vibes. "I dare you." Julian paused. He wasn't drunk, but bored. Done. He tapped on his phone, pulling up the staff roster. One click. An email sent. Subject line, "You're invited, Grandridge Gala 2025. He grinned. She won't show anyway. The next morning, Naomi stood in her tiny kitchen, staring at her cracked phone screen. The email was real. Date, time, venue. She looked around her one-bedroom apartment, still damp from last night's leak. It had been years since she was invited anywhere, and never by someone like him. Was this real? A mistake? A cruel joke? Her chest tightened. She deleted the email. Then she went to her closet. In the back, still in a plastic dry cleaner's wrap, was the dress. Midnight blue. Bought 10 years ago for a friend's wedding she couldn't afford to attend. She'd never returned it. One day, she had whispered back then. Maybe one day now. Back at the estate, Julian was already regretting the email. Not because he felt guilty, he didn't believe she'd come. But there was a pit in his stomach, vague and unfamiliar. He scrolled through his feed, full of glittering RSVPs and designer endorsements. Everyone loved the Grandridge Gala. It was a theater. A place for power to peacocks. A stage he knew too well. Still, that night as he passed the same hallway Naomi had mopped, he noticed something different. A scent, lavender and lemon. Faint. Soft. He remembered her now. Naomi. Not just the help. Back in her apartment, Naomi stood barefoot, holding the dress to her chest. Not for them. Not to prove anything. For her. Have you ever felt unseen in a world that only looks at surfaces? Drop your story in the comments. Someone needs to read it. Hello, my beautiful family and friends. I'm so happy to have you here. If you're ready to be part of this special story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And be sure to stay tuned, because tomorrow I'll be back with another story that's just as unforgettable, and you won't want to miss it. Alright, let's begin this journey together. She pulled it down from the hanger. The zipper still worked. The Grandridge Gala was less an event and more a ritual, where egos dressed in silk and secrets clinked champagne glasses. Julian stood near the bar, surrounded by friends in sharp tuxedos, laughing louder than necessary. He wasn't really listening. His eyes kept drifting to the door, though he couldn't explain why. Guilt wasn't a familiar emotion for him, but something about Naomi lingered. She won't come, he reminded himself again. It was a joke. A harmless one. The jazz band swelled in tempo. Gold light spilled over $1,000 centerpiece, all roses and fake candlesticks. Then the doors opened. And everything went silent. Naomi walked in. Not in a maid's uniform. Not in plain clothes. But in midnight blue. The fabric hugged her figure with elegance and defiance. Her hair, once hidden under wraps and scarves, flowed in natural curls that crowned her like royalty. Around her neck, a single vintage pearl necklace. No one knew where she got it. But it shimmered like it was born there. Julian's glass slipped slightly in his hand. Gasps flickered across the ballroom like wind over water. Heads turned. Mouths fell open. A woman in red whispered to her friend, "Who is that?" Naomi didn't rush. Every step was measured, like a song with no need to hurry. Like she had every right to be there. Because she did. Her eyes scanned the room. Not searching, but naming. Every face that once looked past her, she now met with calm fire. And then she saw him. Julian. He swallowed, suddenly dry-mouthed. He hadn't expected her. Not like this. Not glorious. Their eyes locked. Naomi smiled. But not for him. For herself. She found an empty table in the back corner, ignoring the stares, the whispers. The music picked back up, nervous, too loud. Julian didn't move. Graham elbowed him. Well, Grandridge. You went and created a goddess. Didn't think she'd actually show. Julian didn't laugh. Should I go talk to her? Graham smirked. Julian turned sharply. No. Naomi sat alone, sipping water. A waiter approached awkwardly. Would you like champagne? She met his eyes. Only if it's the kind served to everyone else. He blushed, nodded, and returned with the same gold-rimmed flute the elite drank from. Near the bar, Julian's thoughts tangled. What the hell was I thinking? He remembered her bent over the floors. Quiet. Invisible. But now, this woman? She carried herself like she owned every room they tried to keep her out of. Julian finally stepped toward her, slow. Unsure. He felt like a child at his own event. Naomi saw him coming and didn't move. He stopped just in front of her. You came, he said softly. She tilted her head. You invited me. There was no warmth in her voice. Not cruelty, either. Just a fact. A strange pressure built behind Julian's eyes. I didn't think, he began. I know, she said, sipping again. You didn't think so. That's kind of the point. He laughed once, nervously. You look incredible. She raised an eyebrow. Didn't expect a cleaning lady to clean up, did you? Silence. The music continued around them. But between them was something raw and sharp. No, he admitted. I didn't. And for the first time in his life, Julian didn't feel powerful. He felt small. Naomi stood, gently placing her glass down. Enjoy your gala, Mr. Grandridge. She turned to walk away. But Julian's voice, quieter than ever, stopped her. Wait. Why did you come? She turned halfway, the chandeliers catching her profile like a painting. To remind you, she said, that your jokes have names. And hearts. And spines. In the far corner, Bryce leaned toward Graham, snickering, this is better than Netflix. They laughed. Julian didn't. He watched Naomi disappear through a side door, his hands clenched in his pockets, the joke burning his tongue like poison. Asterisk, have you ever walked into a room where no one expected you to belong, and proved them wrong just by showing up? Tell us what it felt like in the comments. Let someone else feel brave today. Asterisk. The rain had started just as Naomi slipped out the side door. The first drops tapped the marble steps like hesitant fingers. By the time she reached the end of the long driveway, it was coming down in sheets, soaking her gown, chilling her skin. But she welcomed it. The cold. The wet. It was honest, unlike the stares, the whispers, the forced smiles inside. She could still hear Julian's voice in her head. Asterisk, why did you come? Asterisk. Because I needed to remind myself I existed. Her heels clicked against the sidewalk as she walked toward the main road, head held high despite the storm. Inside, the Gala sputtered on. Julian stood at the window, watching the rain, watching her vanish into it. Graham appeared at his elbow, grinning. Mate, what was that? You looked like you saw a ghost. Julian didn't answer. Bryce joined in, sloshing champagne. She sure shut you up. Never thought I'd see Julian Grandridge lost for words. Julian set his glass down harder than he meant to. The sound cracked through their laughter. Enough, he said, low. Bryce raised a brow. Chill, man. It was just a bit of fun. Was it? Julian shot back. The air between them shifted. Julian grabbed his coat and stepped outside. The rain hit him instantly, cold and cleansing. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he couldn't stay in that room 1 second longer. Naomi made it home, peeled off the soaked gown, and draped it carefully over a chair. It had served its purpose. She wrapped herself in an old robe, boiled tea, and stared at the city lights through her tiny window. A voice inside whispered, "Asterisk, you should have stayed home. What did you expect? Asterisk." But deeper still, another voice answered, "Asterisk, you did what they never imagined you would. And that is enough. Asterisk." She didn't sleep much that night. The next day, the papers were all over it. Mystery woman steals spotlight at Grandridge Gala asterisk. Who was the dazzling guest in blue? Julian Grandridge's gala surprise, a new muse? Naomi stared at the headlines on her phone. They didn't know it was her. Not yet. She scrolled to the comments, hundreds of them. Stunning. Finally some real beauty at one of these boring rich people parties. Black excellence personified. But also, probably some rich man's mistress. Social climber. Bet she's after Julian's money. She shut it off, heart pounding. Julian stayed in his penthouse that morning, blinds drawn, phone ignored. The night replayed in his head on loop. Naomi's gaze. Naomi's words. The way the room fell silent. He wasn't proud. He wasn't amused. He was ashamed. What did she see when she looked at me? Asterisk, he wondered. Asterisk, a coward. A fool. A man who thought a joke would make him feel big. He scrolled through his phone, photos from the night. There she was, in the background of one. The only one not smiling. I should apologize. But the words felt thin. Weak. He had no right. The next week, Naomi returned to her cleaning shifts. She worked quietly, efficiently, avoiding eye contact. People stared more now, whispered more. A few tried to corner her with questions. Where'd you get that dress? Are you seeing Mr. Grandridge? Are you going to another gala? She ignored them. But Julian watched her from his office, guilt thick in his throat. Have you ever wished you could take back a joke that went too far, or been on the receiving end of one? What would you have done in Julian's or Naomi's place? Share your thoughts in the comments. Julian tried once to approach Naomi as she dusted a shelf. She didn't look at him. Naomi, he began. She kept dusting. He hesitated. Then I walked away. It was supposed to be a simple day, another event, another show of power, another polished excuse for purpose. Julian's estate was hosting a charity auction for a literacy program. High-end art, celebrity attendees, catered nonsense. Naomi had been assigned to prep the East Wing. She considered calling in sick. But rent was due. And she'd survived worse than awkward silences. She wore plain clothes again. Hair tied back. The version of herself that made others comfortable. But her presence still turned heads. This time, they knew who she was. Not by name. Just by that night. By mid-afternoon, clouds rolled in, thick and brooding. Guests parked their luxury cars, posed for photos, and passed by Naomi like a silent breeze. Julian watched from the second floor. He hadn't spoken to her in over a week. Not properly. And yet, there she was. Still showing up. For what? A paycheck? Or maybe something bigger. Stronger. The storm hit harder than expected. A burst of thunder cracked the sky as the first wave of rain slammed against the windows. Wind howled through the garden. Power flickered. Then darkness. Complete. The room filled with gasps and nervous chuckles. A few guests pulled out phones, the screens casting eerie glows. Someone knocked over a wine glass. Ladies and gentlemen, Julian announced from the main staircase, trying to keep calm in his voice, we've lost power. Please remain inside until the backup generator kicks in. It didn't. Naomi was checking a breaker in the East Hall when she heard footsteps behind her. Julian. They were alone. Just the two of them. The emergency lights painted him in shadows. You still don't believe in electricians? She asked, dry. Julian smiled, then sighed. Funny. I was just thinking how you're the only one in this house who actually knows how it works. She looked at him. No makeup. No dress. Just Naomi. And yet still powerful. I'm not interested in another performance, she said, turning back to the panel. I'm not performing, he replied. Isn't that what you people do best? The silence between them was tight, sharp-edged. Julian exhaled. Naomi. I'm sorry. For everything. The joke. The invite. Not saying anything after. I didn't know how. She stood still. I didn't know how, he repeated, softer this time. Yet you know how to own buildings. Hire staff. Host galas. But dignity? That's where you draw the line. He looked down. I didn't see you. Not really. That's the truth. Naomi turned around, leaning against the wall. The rain pounded outside. It felt like the world itself was waiting. You didn't see me, she echoed. Or maybe you did. And you thought it was funny. Julian met her eyes. I didn't see you. And that wasn't funny. It was pathetic. On my part. The lights stayed off. The hallway dimmed. And something cracked between them. Not anger. Not forgiveness. Something else. Understanding. They moved to a nearby sitting room with candles. Staff lit a few in ornate holders. Julian and Naomi sat on opposite couches. Why did you stay at the gala? He asked. Naomi looked into the candle flame. Because if I'd left, they'd have won. Who's they? She looked up. The voice in your head that says people like me don't belong in places like that. Julian nodded slowly. I want to be better, he said. Naomi raised a brow. Why? He paused. Because when you walked in, everything changed. They sat in silence for a long moment. The storm raged outside. Inside, it quieted. Have you ever been trapped in a moment you didn't want, but needed? When has life forced you to face something you were avoiding? Drop it in the comments. We're listening. The generator finally kicked in. Lights flickered back on. Naomi stood. I should get back to work. Julian didn't stop her. But this time, he didn't feel like she was walking away. It felt like something had been left behind. And maybe, something else had begun. The rain didn't let up for 2 more days. When Naomi returned to the estate that Friday, she found a folded note in her locker. 2nd floor library. Tonight. No obligations. Just space. J. She almost threw it away. But something in the word space lingered. That night, the library was empty. Fire crackled in the old stone hearth. Not the usual marble and gold kind of Grandridge wealth, but something older. Quieter. Julian sat near the window, a vinyl spinning softly on the turntable. Etta James. Naomi entered, slow, cautious. Still in her work clothes. Julian didn't stand. He looked up, nervous. You came. I thought maybe you'd fire me if I didn't. He half smiled. You think I'd fire the only person who actually makes this house feel alive? She didn't answer. Just took a seat across from him. Do you know who taught me to love soul music? He asked. Naomi shook her head. My mother. Her name was Layla. He stood and pulled a photo frame from the shelf. Inside, a young black woman in a bright yellow dress, standing beside a much younger Julian at a piano. She died when I was 10. My father didn't keep much of her around after. Naomi studied the photo. She was beautiful. She sang. Not professionally. Just, always. Around the house. In the car. Her voice was the only warm thing in that place. What happened to her? Julian hesitated. Cancer. Fast. Quiet. One day she was humming through breakfast. 2 months later, gone. Naomi's voice dropped. I lost my mother too. Took care of her till the end. That's why I never finished school. Julian looked at her, really looked. You wanted to study music? He asked. Naomi nodded. Music and literature. Wanted to teach. Maybe sing. Maybe both. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. So what stopped you? Just life. She laughed, bitter. Life. Bills. Rent. Reality. Then softer, being born the wrong color, to the wrong zip code, with the wrong last name. Julian didn't argue. Didn't try to fix it. Just sat in the truth. Did you ever sing again? He asked. Only when no one's listening. He stood, walked to the old baby grand in the corner. Dusty. Untuned. He played a few notes. Play something, she said. I'm terrible. Good. Then I won't be the only one afraid. Julian smiled. He kept playing. Naomi stood, walked over slowly. And for the first time in years, she let her voice out. Soft. Controlled. A little cracked at first. But real. The library held its breath. And so did Julian. When the song ended, neither moved. You're not just good, he said. You're devastating. She blinked fast. You really don't remember me, do you? She whispered. Julian looked confused. Naomi walked over to the shelf, pulled a yearbook from the lower stack. She flipped to a page and held it open. I cleaned your father's house once. When you were 12. I dropped a vase. You told your father it was you. Julian's eyes widened. I remember that vase, he said. He slapped me for it. Naomi's lips parted. I didn't know. He shook his head, stunned. You were the girl in the green dress. You looked like sunlight. Naomi swallowed hard. I remembered your kindness. I didn't think you'd remember me. I didn't. Until now. They both stood in the quiet. And something in that silence felt like healing. Have you ever realized someone from your past shaped you more than you knew, good or bad? Did you ever get a chance to thank them, or say what you couldn't before? Drop it in the comments below. The fire snapped softly. Julian looked at her. I want to do something, he said. Not for you. With you. Naomi tilted her head. I want to restore that piano. Fix up this library. Make it a space. For music. For kids. For people like you. Who never got their stage. She stared at him. Is this a charity? She asked. He shook his head. No. It's redemption. Naomi didn't smile. But she didn't walk away either. The next few days shifted quietly. No grand declarations. No confessions. Just presence. Naomi arrived earlier than usual that Monday. The piano tuner was already there, working carefully on the old keys Julian promised to restore. Julian wasn't in his usual suit. He wore jeans. A navy sweater. And he greeted her not with the usual awkward tension, but a quiet, you want coffee? She nodded. They didn't talk much at first. She watched him move through the kitchen like he wasn't pretending anymore. No smooth words, no showman's mask. Just a man making 2 mugs of coffee, pouring sugar without asking because he'd paid attention. They sat near the window, the city fog pressed against the glass. I've been thinking, Julian said, watching the clouds. Most of my life has been a performance. Money, legacy, image. But I don't think I've ever actually lived it. Naomi looked at him, cautious. What changed? You, he said simply. She blinked. You didn't try to impress anyone. You walked into that room and told the truth with your silence. It undid me. Naomi stared at her mug. Truth's expensive, she said. Costs people more than they think. They worked side by side in the coming days, sorting books for the new community library, setting up a schedule for the music program Julian wanted to fund. Naomi made suggestions. He listened. Genuinely. The staff noticed. He's different when she's around, one whispered. Less polished. More real, said another. One afternoon, Julian found an old Polaroid camera buried in his mother's belongings. He brought it down, grinning. Say cheese. Naomi rolled her eyes. That's corny. He snapped the photo anyway. She was mid-laugh. When it developed, he held it up, serious now. This, he said, is the first real thing I've captured in years. Naomi looked at it. Her laugh caught in stillness. Her eyes are soft. Her guard down. She didn't tell him, but she kept the photo. Tucked it into her bag. That evening, they stayed late, cleaning up paintbrushes and moving shelves. He played the piano again. She hummed. Then I sang. It wasn't a performance. Just a sound, drifting across the empty room like breath. He leaned close. Too close. There was a pause. A breath. And then, "No," Naomi said gently, placing a hand on his chest. "Not like this." Julian leaned back immediately. "I'm sorry." She looked down. "I'm not here to be your redemption story. I'm not the woman who saves the broken man." Julian nodded, voice low. "I know. I don't want you to be." "Then what do you want?" He answered without hesitation, "To be someone who's worthy of knowing you. For real." Have you ever connected with someone when you least expected it, not through romance, but through honesty? What did that bond teach you? Share your experience in the comments. Outside, the city lights flickered like stars someone had dropped too low. Inside, Naomi sat at the piano bench, her fingers tracing the ivory keys. "I haven't felt safe like this in a long time," she said quietly. Julian didn't speak. He just sat beside her. Not touching. Not expecting. Just being there. And for once, it was enough. It started with a notification. Naomi was in the grocery store, comparing 2 brands of rice when her phone buzzed. A message from Layla, her neighbor's teenage daughter. "Girl, is this you?" Flushed face, broken heart. A link followed. She tapped it. A video. Blurry phone footage from the gala. Graham and Bryce in tuxedos, drinks in hand, laughing. Bryce, "Can't believe Jules actually invited the cleaning lady. Man's a menace." Graham, "She walked in like she owned the place. Cinderella who?" Laughter. Then Julian's voice, faint but clear in the background. "It was just a joke." Naomi's heart stopped. She watched it again. And again. The world blurred. The grocery aisle disappeared. Her breath tightened. She didn't cry until she got home. She slammed the apartment door shut, dropped her bag, and let her knees hit the kitchen floor. Just a joke. 3 words. Erased everything. Julian saw the video 3 hours later. It was all over social media. He clicked it once. Twice. On the 3rd time, he finally heard his own voice. His stomach dropped. She didn't answer his first call. Or the 2nd. Or the 3rd. By the 5th, she finally texted back. "Don't." The next morning, Naomi didn't show up for work. Julian waited. Paced. Checked the security cameras like a madman. He sent a message. "Please. Let me explain." Her response came hours later. "There's nothing to explain. You were always going to laugh." That night, he drove to her building. He stood at the door for 20 minutes before knocking. She opened it, but barely. Just enough for him to see her eyes. Red. Raw. "Don't say anything," she said. "Naomi. You let them humiliate me. I didn't know they were filming. But you said it." Her voice cracked. "You said I was a joke." Julian's shoulders dropped. It was before. Before the library. Before the song. Before you. Naomi shook her head. "You don't get to divide me like that. There's no before and after. I was always me. And you chose to mock that version." Silence. He stepped back, ashamed. "I didn't mean." "But you did," she said, closing the door softly. "You just didn't think I'd hear it." He sat in his car outside for hours. Didn't drive. Didn't cry. Just felt the weight of 1,000 unsaid things pressing down like concrete. Naomi, inside, curled up on the couch. She didn't touch her dinner. Didn't play her music. Didn't sing. The photo he took of her, laughing mid-moment, lay face down on the table. Have you ever had someone betray your trust without realizing it, only to realize they'd broken something sacred? What did you do with that pain? Share it in the comments. You're not alone. The next day, Naomi sat on her stoop, watching kids ride bikes down the block. One of them, Layla, waved. "You okay, Miss N?" Naomi nodded with a practiced smile. But inside, something had shattered. And this time, she wasn't sure if it could be fixed. The Grandridge mansion was unusually quiet. Julian sat in the same library where Naomi had once sung to him, now dim, dusty, and empty. He hadn't touched the piano in days. The tuner had come and gone. The keys were perfect now, but there was no music in them. He opened his laptop. The video was still trending. Gossip blogs spun it into a dozen headlines. Gala goddess betrayed. Julian Grandridge caught mocking mystery guest. From Cinderella to clapback queen, Naomi speaks out? She hadn't. He closed it. His PR team had sent statements, drafted apologies, offered to spin it. He ignored them all. He thought about deleting the voicemail. But something inside said, no. He hit a record. Naomi. I'm not calling to explain. I know the damage is done. I'm calling to say something I should have said that night at the gala. Before the joke, before everything. You were never the joke. I was. He paused, voice trembling. You said something that night, about my jokes having names. You were right. I see that now. I see you. He hung up. No second take. Across town, Naomi sat in her tiny apartment, folding laundry with mechanical precision. Her phone buzzed once. She saw the voicemail. Didn't play it. Not yet. She put it on the counter and walked away. But as the sun dropped behind the skyline, painting the windows gold, something pulled her back. She pressed play. His voice filled the room. Not polished. Not perfect. Just honest. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. But she listened. All the way through. Then again. And again. The next morning, Naomi woke before sunrise. She dressed slowly. Not in her uniform. Not in her gown. Just in her jeans. A soft sweater. Her hair was wrapped. No makeup. She grabbed her tote bag and tucked something inside before walking out the door. Julian was in the garden, not expecting her. He nearly dropped the hose when he saw her standing at the gate. She didn't move. He stepped toward her, slowly. She held up the photo, the Polaroid he'd taken, mid-laugh. Why did you take this? She asked. Because I didn't want to forget what it really looked like, he said quietly. Naomi studied him. His eyes were tired. His clothes wrinkled. He looked like a man who'd been emptying himself out, piece by piece. Do you believe you hurt me? She asked. Yes. Do you think you can undo it? No. Then why am I here? He took a breath. Because I'm asking you to tell me who I need to become to be the kind of man who deserves to stand beside you. Naomi blinked. Long. Slow. Then stepped forward. I'm not here to fix you, she said. I know. I'm not your second chance. I don't want one. She studied his face. What do you want? He looked her in the eye. To listen. To build. To follow your lead. Even if that means I never get to walk beside you the way I once hoped. Naomi's hand relaxed. Play the piano, she said softly. Julian looked surprised. Now. Yes. They walked inside. The bench creaked. He played. She didn't sing. She just sat next to him. Silent. Still. Together. Have you ever had to decide whether to give someone a second chance, not because they asked perfectly, but because you changed too? Tell us what helped you choose. Someone needs to hear your story. 3 months later. The old library in the east wing of the Grandridge estate no longer smelled like silence. It breathed now. The walls were painted warm cream. The shelves are lined with books donated by strangers and neighbors. A new rug softened the creaky floors. And in the corner, gleaming beneath a hanging light, the restored baby grand piano. Julian stood near the back of the room, dressed simply in a soft gray button-up, sleeves rolled. He wasn't the host. Just a man making coffee. setting chairs, moving quietly. Tonight wasn't his. It was Naomi's. She stood near the front, helping a little girl fix the hem of her dress. "You nervous, Miss Naomi?" the girl asked. Naomi smiled. "Maybe a little. But you're the best singer in the world." Naomi crouched. "You think so?" The girl nodded fiercely. "Better than Beyoncé." Naomi laughed. "Don't tell her that. She might get jealous." They both giggled. The crowd wasn't big, just 20 or 30 guests. Neighbors. Local families. A few from Julian's world who weren't just there for press anymore. Real people. Naomi stepped forward. The lights dimmed. She took the mic gently. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice steady. "This space used to be a room no one entered. It was quiet. Closed. Forgotten." She glanced at Julian. "But now it's open." She turned back. "This room is for voices that were once ignored. For hands that build quietly. For songs that deserve to be heard." She moved to the piano and sat. Her fingers hovered above the keys. Then softly, she began to play. And sing. The room held still as her voice wrapped around them like silk. No background noise. No whispers. Just Naomi. Whole. Seen. Heard. Julian didn't move. He didn't blink. He just let the moment happen. Because this time, it wasn't about him. When the song ended, the silence didn't break right away. Everyone sat in awe, breathing like they'd forgotten how. Then, applause. Thunderous. Honest. No cameras. No spectacle. Just gratitude. Naomi stood. Bowed her head once. And smiled. Later, Julian found her near the shelves, helping a teen pick out her first poetry book. He waited until they were alone. "You were incredible." Naomi looked at him. "I know." He laughed low. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She nodded. "Do you ever think about us?" Naomi studied him. "Sometimes. And I think we're still writing the first page." Julian's eyes softened. "Can I turn it with you?" She stepped closer. "This time," she said, "no pretending." "No pretending," he promised. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. The same piano. The same room. But not as a joke. Not in shame. This time, she wasn't an outsider. She was the music. Have you ever come full circle, returning to a place or person that once hurt you, and finding healing instead? How did you know you were ready? Share your story in the comments. Your truth might be someone else's hope. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I'm sure you enjoyed it, didn't you? We have plenty more beautiful and interesting stories waiting for you. So go ahead, click the image on your screen and enjoy the next one. And don't forget, subscribe and hit the bell.